Hi, I'm Vivian Gaspar with Ask an Attorney, the Attorney's Guide. I am very excited because we are here to cover something that is affecting hundreds of thousands of people. And you may know someone right now who it's affecting. I'm here with an amazing attorney, Susan Henner. Susan Henner is the owner and primary attorney of Henner Law Group PC, located in White Plains, New York. Her firm practices exclusively within the field of immigration law and has been in business since 2001. Susan has over 30 years' experience in handling all types of immigration cases worldwide, to include business related immigration matters for employers, visa petitions for families, and removal proceedings for children and individuals. Her current and past clients include Fortune 500 companies, large accounting firms, major advertising agencies, film production companies, startup companies, and individual persons in need of immigration legal services. As a humanitarian immigration lawyer, Susan has also saved hundreds of clients from deportation. She represents individuals in removal proceedings who are seeking relief from removal in the form of political asylum, withholding of removal, cancellation of removal, and other forms of relief. Susan has also experienced in handling a family-based immigration petitions waivers, VAWA cases. Wow, you're going to have to tell us what that is because I
Yeah.
have a feeling it's something important, Susan. IJ cases, U visas, as well as criminal immigration matters. I'm sure there's a story there I'd love to hear. Criminal investigation, immigration. Wow. She speaks fluently and frequently about immigration issues at various events and at CLE, continuing legal education, bar seminars. Susan also assists employers and agents to obtain artistic, athletic, and entertainment visas for their clients, which includes Olympic athletes, elite marathon runners, Grammy Award winning artists. I wish you could drop the juice on who those are, but I don't think you will. And Academy Award winners. Oh my God. Now we are just going to guess because I know you have attorney client privilege, but now my wheels are turning on who those Academy Award winners are. Wow, you really you know how to deal with celebrities. I'm impressed you're here on my show. Thank you. And she has worked with world famous musicians, artists, entertainers in the and in those in the fashion industry. Of course, we're always going to wonder who it is that might be famous. Susan also works on pro bono basis to mentor other attorneys and to assist children and vulnerable persons who are detained. Her current and past memberships and awards include Super Lawyers 2024 and 2025. I think I see plaques there, Susan, behind you. Women Innovators in Our Region, West Fair Business Journal in 2024. New York City Mayoral Service Award 2016. Business Council of Westchester Award Rising Stars 40 Under 40 in 2004. She is a former co-chair of Westchester County Bar Association Committee on Immigration and Nationality Law, 2012 to 2019. Oh my God, you're so impressive. And a founding member and board member and vice president of Safe Passage Project, 2012 to 2016 at New York Law School. Susan's also a member of the American Immigration Lawyers Association, Westchester County Bar Association, and the Business Council of Westchester, New York. Ms. Henner is currently admitted to practice law in New York, but as an immigration attorney, she can practice in all 50 states and worldwide. She received her BA from State University of New York in Albany and her JD from New York Law School. She is married and has 2 children. I don't know how you have time to have 2 children. You're quite the impressive lady, Susan. Oh my goodness. I can't even imagine if you actually have time to take a little R&R occasionally. So I have to ask, tell me, do you have very famous situation that you could talk about with changing a name or something that wouldn't allude to who it is, but something that's interesting you could kick it off with?
Well, I think, I love what I do. I'm passionate about what I do. And I think it's really fun to work with a lot of the artists and entertainers and, you know, famous celebrities. And it's amazing when you see them get up there on Oscar night and mention your name and they say, and thank you to Susan and stuff. And you're like, wow, that's me.
Oh, I
Yeah,
hope you have I hope you have that on tape somewhere, video.
we do. We do.
That's impressive. But unfortunately, we have some very big problematic is the kind way to phrase that, situations that's overcome our news right now. And that's why you've been asked to be here on Ask an Attorney, the Attorney's Guide, because really people who it's affecting need to hear from such a high level expert such as yourself. They need urgent relief. And so, as the day of this taping, we are hearing so much in the news about immigration law and ICE. We know what ICE is. Can you give us a general overview on what TPS is and why we're hearing so much about it and why is ICE involved?
Well, Vivian, thank you for having me today. And I think what's going on, you're hearing all over the nation as of today. Everything is coming down in Minneapolis. We're hearing ICE moving into Columbus, Ohio, into the New York region. And what's going on is they're actually looking to take into custody people who are out of status. One of the groups that is falling out of status as of February 3rd are groups who had previously had temporary protected status and that status is expiring. Temporary protected status is exactly what it sounds like. Our government had previously granted temporary protected status to groups such as Venezuelans, Haitians, other groups, and that's based on things going on in their countries, such as famine, war, civil issues, or hurricanes, tornadoes, natural disasters, and temporary status and work permits were granted for a certain period of time. Those, however, were only given for a year, 2 years, and they're renewed periodically by our government. And at least for the Venezuelans and the Haitian communities, they were due to expire February 3rd. And while our
Wow,
government, yes,
that's
yeah,
so recently. Oh my God.
yesterday.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
this is so topical. I can't believe how frequently everything is evolving. And that's a
yeah,
very big situation.
yeah. And so, the government right now has some federal judges have actually put a stay in place for the Haitian community and forbid the administration from terminating that. But on the Venezuelan community, there is no stay right now. And so those status are expiring and people are fighting to keep this going, but we're not sure where this is going to end up as of today's taping.
So I need to ask because there's a lot of people who don't have any legal
Yeah.
understanding. Could you please define what a stay is?
A stay is really just allowing people to stay in the United States. It's exactly what it sounds like.
Oh, it's
And
like an
just
extension?
yeah, really, that's what it is. When someone gets temporary protected status, they're granted a work permit and their stay in the United States and their work permit ends on a specific date. So as of that day, they are expected to either change their status to another status, file a new petition, or leave. And if they don't, they are considered out of status and are subject to be taken into custody by ICE or asked to leave immediately.
It's very confusing to me as someone who's not privy to this at all. I mean, I was born here and I was honestly, my parents are immigrants, but that was in the 1960s. So it's been a while and I don't know anything about that. So I'm sure that a lot of our audience members might be in the same situation where they don't understand. So perhaps you could explain why Minnesota, why some of these states and cities specifically are ICE targeting. I never understood what seems it's the middle of the country, and, why? You'd think they'd start off with New York City or South Florida or something where it's more prevalent.
I think it's where a lot of these communities are based. I think Minneapolis has a huge Somali community, and I feel like there's a huge number of refugees or persons who were granted temporary protected status there. In the Columbus, Ohio area, they're talking about a lot of the Haitian community has established and set up there. Also, other places in Ohio. In New York City, there's so many different groups and I think they would get a lot of pushback in New York, and New York was previously a sanctuary city. So I think there would be meaning that it was somewhat protected. But I feel that eventually it will be more prevalent in other cities. It's just a matter of which order that the administration chose to move in on each and every city at
The
this
T
point.
So that helps me understand because I just thought they would go specifically to big cities like New York or Miami or whatever. To me, I was always baffled. Why Minnesota? It didn't seem to make sense. So help everyone understand, what is a sanctuary city? Does that mean if federal government has designated as where you don't have to worry about TPS or any of these other legalities? What does it mean to have a sanctuary city?
Not at all. Sanctuary city is where, say, the mayor or the governor of the state designates it as like a sanctuary city, meaning that we are not going to cooperate with ICE necessarily if they come in. We are going to keep our police officers out of ICE business and we're going to sort of mind our own business. However, the administration has threatened to cut off federal aid to some of these cities, so it remains to be seen how this plays out as well. It'll be interesting to see where this ends up.
Helps me understand. I just didn't understand, and I'm sure a lot of people. What is the rhyme or reason behind some areas having extra attention to enforcement? So when you had mentioned TPS, temporary protective status. When someone who has TPS gets a work permit and they're able to remain working in the United States, is there ever a fear that that could be revoked or changed suddenly?
Absolutely. I mean, especially under the present administration, things are changing every day. It's just new laws, new cases come out, and it's always subject to change. For example, with the TPS, it was always for the Haitian community renewed every single year. And this is the first year where, the government has said, we want to end it right now. We don't think Haitians are eligible any longer, we think it's okay for them to go back. And that's usually a decision made by the State Department in terms of the government. They look at what's going on in the community. But there's been a lot of pushback because there's a lot of armed groups in Haiti. There's a lot of famine. There's a lot of civil strife going on. So that's why the federal judge put this order in place that we cannot end TPS right now. There's also been a lot of pushback saying a lot of the Haitian community is contributing so much and they're working, they're paying taxes. So it's going to be really interesting to see what the ultimate outcome is, whether it's extended or not.
I actually live in an area in South Florida where I see a tremendous amount of Haitian community present. And I've often wondered how some of this works and how it affects them. But now we've all heard it's becoming more and more active in the news. And it's changing on almost daily basis. I don't know how you keep up, bless you. I don't know how you have the emotional stamina to go through so many changes so quickly. But how does this look any different for Venezuelans who were already in the United States when the entire situation with Venezuela took place? Was that only a few weeks ago?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of the Venezuelans had come here seeking temporary help and temporary relief from the situation which was going on in their country. So they were here, they were granted temporary protected status, and that was due to expire February 3rd. And now that's not being extended. So people from Venezuela, some of them are in removal proceedings and need to look for alternate forms of relief. Some are not in removal proceedings and are saying, well, do I go back home or do I file for something else? And what are my options at this point? And they're left in this limbo, really.
So I found it fascinating that even though you're in New York, you can operate anywhere in the country. So does that mean all immigration attorneys are able to function federally and at national level?
Yes, we are, because immigration's a federal law, so we're able to practice in all 50 states. I have clients right now in Texas, Louisiana, in Michigan, in
Wow.
Boston, yeah, all over. So,
And 'cause I really helps so that way when people see this podcast, they know they could reach out to you to get some direct help.
absolutely, absolutely,
That
yeah,
helps a lot. So when my next question is, I love going back to TPS because it amazes me because I like quantitative, I like specific information.
yeah.
So when it's called temporary, my first thought is, well, how long is temporary? And when it expires, why does someone need a lawyer? Can they just fill out forms and say, okay, can I have more time, please? How does that work?
Right. Well, it's really extended by the government. So the government will come out and they'll say, okay, we've reviewed the situation in Venezuela, for example, and we think we're going to extend temporary protected status for Venezuelans for another 18 months or 1 year or 2 years. And persons who have TPS would really just fill out their extension of their work permits, or sometimes in the past, it's automatically extended. Okay, but
Oh, that's
now
great.
yeah, that's
But
what's
not now.
happened in the past. But now, with everything going on with ICE enforcement, it's dangerous just to do that and just wait and do nothing and hope that it's going to be extended because we don't know if it's gonna be extended, when it's gonna be extended, for how long. So my opinion as an attorney is you want to be proactive and act as if my status may be ended and what are my next moves? Do I want to go back to my country? Are we ready to go back? Are things better? Should I be looking to go to a third country or do I apply for something else here where I could stay, change my status, look to do something different? Yeah.
Well, I know you're working a lot of cases right now. Is there any kind of specific story or example you could provide?
Well, we had a couple of clients who've been recently detained, which was interesting. Just so you know, anyone who's within a certain amount of space of the US border is subject to detention. They're seen if you travel upstate New York, if you're traveling by the Texas Mexico border, you're considered sort of in that 100 miles space where you could be subject to at least ask for your papers and prove that you are legally admitted to the United States. So we
100
have
miles of where?
of the border, of a US border with another country.
Oh,
So I had a client recently from Haiti who was a visiting family in Buffalo, and this gentleman had come into the country through a humanitarian program under the former president, and he had applied for TPS, temporary protected status, which is still pending. It has not been granted yet. And he was approached by ICE and taken into custody because of the fact that he has no approved petition yet, and his temporary protected status had ended. His excuse me, parole had ended in August, September. So the government said, "Well, you're not legal because your new petition has not been approved. PS is ending, and you have nothing." So he was detained, and we got a bond hearing for him last week. And we explained to the judge what was going on. We showed he had a pending petition, and we were able to secure a bond for him the other day, and he was released. At
that's so
this point,
wonderful.
yeah, it was great. It was great. And so now he decided this gentleman was politically active in Haiti and had suffered some harm when he was there, and decided that his next move is going to be to apply for asylum here because he feels he cannot go back to Haiti. And that even if TPS is not renewed, and that he can't get anything else, he'll have an option to try and remain legally in the US.
That reminds me, I think little birdie told me, or you, I think you told me earlier that you are so dedicated to humanitarian work that you've gotten the nickname the humanitarian asylum attorney. That's impressive. So you really know your stuff when it comes to anybody coming from a country where they might qualify for asylum. That seems to be your specialty. Am I right?
We do a lot of asylum work. Yeah, we work with clients from so many countries. We have clients we're working with from Haiti, Venezuela, Cameroon, Brazil, Guatemala. Where else? I'm trying to think. El Salvador, Mexico, all over. And
Wow.
yeah, anywhere that a client feels that they've been persecuted in the past or maybe persecuted in the future, they're entitled to file a petition for asylum here in the United States. And the interesting part is you're supposed to file that petition within 1 year of coming to the US. There are exceptions, but I think that's what trips most people up because they don't know that they were supposed to file within this 1 year period.
Oh, wow. So, what is the technical definition of asylum? And which countries? I mean, there's probably more countries to say that they would qualify from, but is it a difficult burden to get somebody's application for asylum approved?
Yeah, so a person can apply for asylum if they have been persecuted in the past on account of their race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group. So if something happened in the past and you could prove it, the burden then shifts to the government to show why they can go back. So a lot of clients will come to me and have medical records, or they'll have police reports saying, this is what happened to me in my country. Do you think I'm eligible? And they'll affirmatively apply for asylum. You could also apply for asylum if you're in removal proceedings, if you're picked up by ICE, if you're stopped by
Wow.
ICE, and you're able to apply that way as well. If you don't apply within 1 year, you have a higher burden of proof. You could either show you qualified for an exception, that there was a reason why you didn't file within that 1 year. For example, the situation wasn't bad when you first got here, but now it's changed for the worse. Or you are still able to apply, but it's a higher burden and you're only eligible for something called withholding of removal or Convention Against Torture Relief. And there you have to show it's more likely than not you would be persecuted if you were to be returned at this time. So it is a much higher burden of proof.
So, even though I do have a lot of questions about TPS related to Venezuela, but I hope you don't mind if I ask you something that just popped into my head.
No, that's
So,
fine.
do you mind if I give that a shot?
No,
My
definitely.
my first thought is there's a lot of places in this world still where it is legally illegal to be homosexual.
Yeah.
And even if that person was not specifically targeted, but they're afraid that they can't live how they would preferably choose to live if they were to go back because the law in their country states that it is illegal to be homosexual. Is that possible?
Yes. I mean, there are many, many countries. Those countries include, we deal with a lot of countries, such as Colombia is one that we deal with a lot. We deal with countries such as, I mean, Uganda's one. We hear a lot of that. Also, that deals with female genital mutilation. We hear a lot of countries that deal with that. I'm trying to think what other countries we have
Well,
a lot. Um,
any of the
Ira
Arab-related countries,
Yes,
perhaps?
Iran, Iraq, any of those countries as well. When I first started my practice, I had a young man who literally was a homosexual from Iran, and the penalty for being a homosexual in Iran is death. I mean, they will cut off your head and it's in their constitution. So we walked into the asylum interview with a copy of the constitution from the country where it says, the penalty is death for this, and he was immediately granted asylum. And
Have you ever seen where they don't grant asylum even in those circumstances. Uh,
Yeah,
is that
yeah,
possible?
it is 100%. I mean, again, sometimes the asylum officer or judge will doubt the sexuality of the person. We've seen where they want the asylum seeker to actually prove that they are a member of this group. So how do you prove that?
Prove that.
Exactly. Well, you could prove it by showing that you've lived openly in the U.S. As a homosexual since you come here. Maybe you're a member of certain homosexual groups since you've been here, marched in rallies, things like that. Or you could have a partner who testifies for you. There are other, there are things like that we do strategize to how to, what are the best things you could show to prove that you are a member of this social group.
I would think that there's so many countries, unfortunately, where that's still the situation, that that
Absolutely.
may be, and I'm asking, this is why it's a question, I don't know,
Yeah.
if that would quote unquote be an easy way to go to get asylum if you happen to have that as one of your country as your country of origin, one of those qualifying countries where that's their in their constitution.
I wouldn't say it's easy because remember, you still have to file within 1 year. And if you didn't, you have to show an exception why you didn't file within 1 year. And you still have to show that you belong to that social group. You still have to show that you're not making this up just to get asylum. If you file a frivolous or fraudulent application for asylum, it bars you from any relief ever. So, we always warn our clients that, you want to make sure you're 100% on this and that you're being honest and it's a bona fide application. And when you go before the immigration court, they will swear you in. They will make you raise your right hands and tell the truth. And I had a judge yesterday who said, repeated several times to my client, I'm just making sure you're aware the penalties for filing a frivolous application and that you're aware of this and your lawyer explained this to you and you still want to move forward with your application. So, they're very, very careful on that.
Well, just no, there's so many nuances there, as you said, are changing almost daily. It must be stressful, not just for you, but for everybody who's not here completely legally, as in
Yeah.
they're not a full citizen.
Yeah.
And do you have an estimated number of how many people that could be in currently in the United States?
Illegally or legally?
No, no, no. Well, illegally and legally, there's a qualifying, right? So I
Right.
didn't know if you knew in either direction because then I want to get back to this whole situation in Venezuela. Is so strife
Yeah.
with turmoil
Yeah.
that I'd love to hear more about it. But I was just curious, are there any kind of realistic statistics on who's here legally and when I say illegally, that they're not fully a citizen yet. So they're in some state of flux.
Not entirely sure. We're hearing between 300 and 500,000 Venezuelans, but I'm not sure how accurate that is. Um,
That's a
no, I know it. It's a lot. It's a lot of people who are affected by these laws and what's happening next. Is our government going to try to deport all these people? What are they going to file for asylum? What's the next steps? Are they going to give in and extend temporary protected status now, given the change in government? Yeah.
um, so is there a specific time frame? I mean, should everybody from Venezuela go see an immigration attorney as soon as possible? Obviously, you couldn't handle everybody, but maybe some of them.
Well, I think if everyone who has, temporary protected status and then it was expiring or is expiring, absolutely. Yes, you need to. I would not just do nothing because you're going to then be subject to being removed, right? So if people have come on a visa and they're here on a valid visa, that's a different status. Someone may have be here on a student visa or a work visa or things like that, different. But if someone's here, under TPS and it was due to expired, I would say don't sit around, don't wait. because you don't know what's going to happen, and absolutely go see a lawyer and speak to someone right away.
So what is a good time frame window to see a lawyer? So let's say they have another, I don't know, 6 months left on their TPS. Should they see somebody in 3 months before the end, or now it's 6 months before the expiration date?
Now, because it takes a lot to prepare an application for anything, especially an asylum application. There's a lot that goes into it. You want to gather documents, you want to gather affidavits, any evidence as to what's happened to you. And remember, you can't just file asylum by saying, hey, things are bad in my country. It's individual and specific. What is going to happen to you the minute you get off that plane? Why would you be singled out for persecution? So those are the only cases that are going to be granted. What did you do that's going to cause you to suffer persecution on account of your race, religion, nationality, political views, or social group the minute you go back to Venezuela? You can't just say, "Oh, well, the government is just gonna, things are in turmoil and the government's changing and it's bad." We know it's bad, but that's not gonna get you asylum.
So what would be some of the alternatives if their TPS can't be extended for whatever reason?
Mhm.
What would be some of the options for somebody who's a Venezuelan national currently at this moment still in the United States if they believe they can't go back?
Well, I would say asylum's one, obviously. So that's a big one. And to speak to a lawyer and see if they qualify and are there reasons why that they would be targeted or have been targeted in the past. Number two, there are other humanitarian types of visas. Were these clients ever the victim of a crime here in the United States? Then they may be eligible for something called a U visa. Is there if the applicant is a child and has only one parent here, they may be eligible for what you had mentioned earlier, special immigrant juvenile status. That's another way to seek a visa or green card here. There are many other options. If the person was trafficked to the United States, they're, victim of trafficking, there's a T visa. And if the person came with a visa and is still in status, which is going to expire, they may want to look at, is there a different work visa or can I extend my stay a little bit longer? If they're here on a student visa, can I continue in school? Do I want to get a master's degree or even higher degree? um, there are ways to look into your eligibility and see, is there something we could do?
Is there an age limit? You just mentioned student visas. Is there a way for someone, let's say they're older and not typical student age? So let's
Yep.
say someone's in their, I don't know, 30s, 40s,
Mhm,
somebody who's not what you'd think is a typical student age.
mhm.
Is it more likely to get approved as a student visa if you were here on a regular TPS and just switch it over to that? Is that something that's relatively safe and easy to do?
Well, student visas are open to anyone as long as you're going to an approved program. What happens is the schools are the ones who get approved. They get certified by our government to accept foreign students. And I'm sure that, you've heard in the news lately about that certifications are being taken away from certain schools. But if the school remains certified, the school will evaluate the students. There are schools who give visas for students who are computer based, schools who teach the English language to people. And you could go for 6 months, a year, etc., depending on if you're qualified and what your status is, if you're eligible to change your status to attend the school. So, yeah, those
A
are
list
things to look
someplace
into.
which are, oh, is there a list that's easy to obtain of which schools or colleges are approved currently, since there's so much in flux with the status of being approved is suspended or taken away by the government?
I mean, you can look online, but really the best way is to call the schools you're interested in, and you would speak to what's called the foreign student advisor at that school. There's usually one person designated at the school who will have the knowledge and be able to walk you through the process at the school. And sometimes they will issue the paperwork for it, and sometimes they'll even do the visa for you, and other times they'll
Wow.
say you need an immigration lawyer to file the papers, but here's the certifying papers that will allow you to go to school here.
I would still think the best thing to do is go to an immigration attorney to play it safe. It's not something you want to roll the dice on and take a chance because I'm guessing that since they're so adamant about enforcement, they might look for reasons on an application to kind of be very, very extraordinarily thorough, is the best way to phrase that.
Well, that, yeah. And we're seeing cases where if someone gets a denial of a visa or any other type of case, they're now being put right into removal proceedings. So, for example, you have someone who comes in on a visa, gets married to a US citizen, goes on their interview, and then gets denied for whatever reason, immediately right into removal proceedings. It used to be, it wasn't really enforced, nothing would really happen. Years could go by and nothing would happen. And now immediately they're getting what's called a notice to appear in immigration court. And they'll get a second bite at the apple in immigration court, but they're being put right into removal proceedings. So it's very
Wow. How
important.
fast? Oh my God, removal proceedings that quickly? How
Within a
fast does
month
that
or two,
happen?
we're seeing. Yeah, yeah, pretty quick, pretty quick.
That's fast. A month or two?
Yeah,
I uh,
yeah.
I didn't know how fast it is. Going back to Venezuela, because I know what you're talking about here could apply to anyone from any country. But going back to Venezuela, how has the situation changed, being that Maduro has been captured and extradited to the U.S.? Because I've also seen where Venezuela wants him taken back to Venezuela. So has that changed for general people, Venezuelan nationals?
I think it's really an emerging situation, like as of today's taping. And it remains to be seen because what is going to happen right now? So you have people who may have supported his government, and are they at risk? And maybe there'll be people seeking asylum because they feel like their lives are at risk, right? And then you
Amazing.
may, and then you have people who could be here and say, well, just because he's captured doesn't mean some other people who worked for him or worked for the government are not still there and would come after me. So I feel like each individual situation really needs to be assessed and looked into as to what are the factors involved and why would I be at risk if I go back? And is there a risk to me and myself and my family if we were sent back at this?
Speaking of family, I was just wondering, do you ever deal with families as a collective
Yeah.
versus just one person at a time? I mean, does that make it easier when you're dealing with an entire family? Let's say it's a husband, wife, hypothetically, with two kids, just being very generalizing.
It's horrible. I mean, we had one the other day and the parents came over with children. They came over the border with these children, applied for asylum from Ecuador, and they're here and they're applying for asylum. But, when one gets deported, there's only one made applicant. They're all going to get removed. So what applies to one applies to all, unfortunately.
Does,
So
does, does it help if they have a family member in the United States who's a citizen to help? I heard the term might be sponsoring. Does that help?
only really for bond purposes. So if someone's detained by immigration and they have a sponsor, it helps to show strong family ties here. And if you have family members here, so that it does definitely come into play. And there are certain other forms of relief for someone who's been here 10 years and gets taken into custody by ICE, may be eligible for something called cancellation of removal. And what cancellation is someone who's here 10 years, has a qualifying family member that's a spouse, a parent, or a child, um, and they would apply for this, but you have to show extreme and exceptional hardship to your family member. So, what the court will look for is medical issues. They'll look to conditions in the country. They'll look for reasons why your qualifying family member can't go back to the country with you. So, we deal a lot with these families who are here, give birth to a child in the United States, the child's autistic and or has
Mhm.
severe medical issues. And they say, I can't go back to my country. My country's a third world country and my child will die there if we go back. I can't, and there's no one here to take care of them. So that comes up a lot.
And are those cases typically approved because of the hardship present?
Yeah, a lot of them it depends on which court and which judge, let's just say. Um,
Oh, wow.
I would say in the Northeast, yes, we see a lot of them approved, depending on the level of hardship. In the old days, it used to be my child has asthma and you would get it. These days, the level has risen substantially. And, a child in a wheelchair may not be granted. And we've heard this especially from some of the southern states and where the judges are just not granting them very often. Um, and on top of that, there are only a certain number of visas allotted to these cases each year. I think the number is 6,500. So after these numbers are given, you have to wait and wait and wait, even if your case is granted, to get the actual green card. So we have clients from 2, 3 years ago who were granted but don't have their final green card yet because we're still in the queue.
Wow. So I guess it just dawned on me another question.
Yeah.
You said depends on where. So since you're able to practice in all 50 states, I think it sounds like it would be a good idea that you might know where you should gear someone. So even if, so for example, let's say someone's living currently in Florida and
Hmm.
they're from Haiti, for example, they should still seek your help and your counsel that even though you're in New York State, you might be able to best guide them to which areas. I don't know if jurisdiction is the right terminology in this situation, but it sounds like that could be helpful to know where exactly to go through demographically or geographically, I mean to say, or jurisdiction wise. Is that correct?
Could help, but like you don't have a choice. It goes by where you live. So if
Okay.
someone is living in Florida, their case will automatically go to Miami or Orlando Immigration Court if they're put into removal proceedings. But if someone comes in and says, we're deciding where to live and should we move to South Carolina, New York, or California, which would be the best for my case, then, we could look at the pros and cons of each, of course, before they make that
So
decision.
that is a great qualifier. So now I understand, and hopefully other people will too.
Yeah,
There's ways to work the what I would say system, but it's really to know where it's most beneficial. And you definitely could guide people. You've been doing this with not just average people, but so many countries. Do you have an idea of how many different countries you've helped people with in your career?
we have a map outside in our waiting room where the clients put their pin in their countries, so we know which countries they've come from, and it's hundreds. Yeah, for sure.
Like, so you're saying you probably help people from over 100 countries in your career?
I would say so, yeah. Yeah,
It's amazing, Susan. Wow.
it's fun. It definitely is.
That's like that is truly, I think you deserve the moniker of the humanitarian asylum attorney. That is so cool. Cool. I'm not sure which one you prefer. So the other question I was going to say, you said people can file them for asylum, but I mean, I know that people are wondering why go through an attorney versus on their own because I'm sure there's forms everywhere.
Mm.
And I know we touched on this before, but since ICE is becoming so aggressive, I don't know another word, diligently, that I definitely would want to take the chance and roll the dice on doing a form yourself because I would be so concerned that one wrong answer phrased a different way than they're probably looking for it to be or not following guidelines in a way that I mean I'm sure this is a situation where if you don't know, you're not an attorney, you're not aware of how it should be presented, right? There's a certain unspoken way to present a case, or it's not
Absolutely.
publicly known what's the right way to present it so it would be approved. Is that true?
It is. I would think that, what we know is there are certain things a judge expects when you're presenting your cases. There are certain legal arguments that have to be made. And if you're representing yourself pro se, unfortunately, you don't know those things. And immigration is one of those areas of law that you're not automatically appointed an attorney. You know, if you're in a criminal case, you're given a free attorney. Immigration law, they have free services, but those services are often backed up for so long, you could wait years to get an attorney, and by then it's too late, and they're often overwhelmed. A lot of attorneys do work on sliding scales. We try to work out payment plans for our clients if they're unable to pay it all in one lump sum. But it's really good to have someone just to really help break down the process for you because there are certain documents that a judge expects to see. And if you don't have them, if you don't present your appropriate legal arguments at the time and file your documents timely, your case could be dismissed. You know, I had a client who came to us the other day and they said, my case was dismissed and I filed something late and I didn't even know it was late until I got into the courtroom and apparently the judge had set a timeline and I didn't understand that. Can you help me? So now we're filing a motion to reopen to try to get it back before the judge and explain that the client was unaware, but it's often difficult to reopen a case once once this happens.
So there's to me, and now that I know, and I was actually going to ask, I think the people who want to do it themselves, I think they assume that they can't afford an attorney.
Yeah.
That's what my guess would be. So it's really nice that you just volunteered. You read my mind. It's so helpful. When someone's interviewing you and you read your mind, it's so helpful. Uh, to volunteer that you automatically see how you could work with people instead of it being where they just assume they can't afford your services,
Right.
that you truly are a humanitarian by doing everything in your power to help people despite any financial difficulties.
We do, we do. You know, we do work out payment plans a little bit each month to try to help our clients because we know that some of them just aren't able to afford it. And, you know, it really does help them and give them peace of mind to know it's being done correctly and that they have a little bit of time to pay for sure.
So, my last question, I need to just say one last question.
Sure.
Some people have always been under the assumption or have heard that if you have an extraordinary talent, and I know people have nicknamed this Einstein visa, is that a real thing? Because I know in the beginning when we did your introduction, you mentioned that you've helped some very famous, highly talented people. So, but is it always to that level that you have to be Grammy award winning material, or could it just be somebody who's really good at whatever their occupation is? What is the likelihood of getting occupation or talent related visas?
Well, it could be one major award like a Grammy, a Tony, or something like that level, or you have to fit into three other categories. So, for example, for extraordinary ability in the arts, you could show prizes or awards in your field, lesser known. You could show there are articles written about you in your field. You could show memberships in groups where you were awarded membership in the group because you have distinction in your fields or your occupation. You would show that you held a lead or critical role in an organization that has a distinguished reputation. So that's another category. You could show that you are considered by others to be at the top of your field. So we do this a lot for artists, sculptors, fashion designers, who are well known, but they don't necessarily have, you know, they're not award winning to the fact that they got a Tony or Grammy, or not Tony, but like a Tony or Academy Award winner for like costume design. They're not that level yet, but they've done a lot in their field. Also models, entertainers, musicians, and it's so much fun. And I love working on those types of cases.
That sounds really amazing. Because I was just, when you said about their having had articles written about them or any kind of publicity, that's something that they can get accomplished if they have a knowledge base or a talent. What if it's in business? So I'm curious now, there's only one last qualifier. Does that mean in their country or in the United States that they have had these accolades about them or an award or however you want to phrase it, perhaps in publicity
Yeah. It could
aspects?
it could be nationally or internationally. So, for example, when we're looking at the publication where the article appeared, you wanted to show that it's a distinguished publication. You want to show the circulation numbers. You want to show that it's a well-known publication and it's not just, the newsletter that circulates in your town. You want to show that it's something that people read or has a large internet presence and that people are reading it, but it could be nationally or internationally where they have this acclaim or they're well known.
And I think it sounds like you could probably guide them on those situations also to tell them if they have a qualifying situation. Because there's so many possibilities. You told us an enormous amount of possibilities now that someone may qualify to stay in the United States,
Yeah.
since this sounds pretty much impossible to navigate on your own,
Uh,
especially when you personally are willing to make payment arrangements on your legal fees, which is amazing. That's why I love that you genuinely are the humanitarian asylum attorney. I love
oh,
that.
thanks. Yeah, we do a free consultation for 15 minutes. And, after that, then we work with clients to figure out what the payments would be if they say, I can't afford it. How could we work this out? We really want to work with you. And we do our best to really try to work with clients where it's fair for everyone.
Oh, that's fantastic. Susan, I think it's amazing. And this is a knowledge base where there's just going to be more questions. And there's only so much time we have on Ask an Attorney, the attorney's guide. And I love that you came. Thank you so much. And I encourage people, your information will be available. Otherwise, just take a look. Your name is right there on the bottom, and you're out of New York in White Plains, New York. And thank you very much for coming on. And I look forward to having you on in the future. Perhaps something will hit the news and you want to share it with us.
Uh,
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you for having me.